It all started on a cloudy morning in the heart of the city. The streets were wet with last night's rain, puddles reflecting the neon lights that never seemed to switch off. People hurried across crosswalks, umbrellas colliding, feet splashing through shallow water. In the middle of all this, a man named Daniel stood by the sidewalk, waiting for his bus. He was just like everyone else, lost in thought, slightly weary from the weight of daily life. But unlike most, Daniel had something different on his mind. He had made a promise to himself that morning: no matter what, he would try to make at least one person smile today. It wasn't because life was easy for him, it wasn't. He had bills piling up, a demanding job, and family responsibilities that often kept him awake at night. But he believed that sometimes, giving kindness to others was the best way to heal his own heart. As he stood waiting, he noticed an elderly woman struggling with her grocery bags. The bags were far too heavy for her frail arms, and the plastic was starting to stretch dangerously. People walked past her, some glancing, most ignoring, each one too caught up in their own world. Daniel didn't hesitate. He walked up to her and gently said, "Let me help you with those." The woman looked at him, surprised. Strangers rarely stopped to help in this part of the city. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded gratefully. Daniel carried her bags across the street to her apartment building. It wasn't far, but the woman kept thanking him with every step. When they reached her door, she smiled with such warmth that it seemed to brighten the gray morning. "You remind me of my grandson," she said softly. "He used to help me just like this." Daniel smiled back, and for a moment, the heaviness of his day felt lighter. He waved goodbye and walked back toward his bus stop, not realizing that someone had been watching the entire exchange. A young woman named Clara, sitting inside a nearby coffee shop, had seen Daniel help the elderly woman. Clara was a university student, tired from studying all night for her exams. She had been feeling burnt out, hopeless even, like her efforts were never enough. Watching Daniel's simple act of kindness stirred something inside her. She realized she had been so consumed by her own struggles that she hadn't thought much about others. When Clara left the coffee shop, she noticed a man sitting on the sidewalk with a cardboard sign that read, "Hungry. Anything helps." Normally, she might have walked past, pretending not to see. But this time, something was different. She remembered the kindness she had just witnessed, and she decided to act. She went back into the coffee shop, bought an extra sandwich and a hot drink, and handed it to the man on the street. The man's eyes widened, his hands trembling as he accepted the food. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You don't know how much this means." Clara smiled, and in that moment, she felt a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. She walked away lighter, unaware that her act had just been seen by another passerby. This passerby was a middle-aged man named Robert, a taxi driver waiting for his next ride. He had been leaning on his car, sipping coffee, when he saw Clara hand food to the man on the street. Robert was struck by the sincerity of the gesture. He thought about his own life, about how he often got frustrated at work when passengers were rude or when traffic was unbearable. Maybe, he thought, he needed to bring more patience, more kindness into his own day. Later that afternoon, Robert picked up a young couple from the hospital. They looked exhausted, holding a newborn baby wrapped in a thin blanket. The couple quietly asked to be taken to a small apartment across town. As Robert drove, he overheard them whispering about how worried they were about money, about whether they could afford everything their baby needed. When they reached their destination, Robert glanced at the meter. The fare was more than he thought they could afford. He paused for a moment, then smiled and said, "Don't worry about the fare. This ride is on me. Congratulations on your baby." The couple's eyes filled with tears. They tried to protest, but Robert insisted. He handed them his card and told them if they ever needed a ride in an emergency, they could call him directly. As he drove away, Robert felt something shift inside him. That small act, inspired by what he had witnessed earlier, filled him with unexpected joy. And so, the ripple continued. The young mother from the taxi, her heart full of gratitude, found herself later that evening standing in line at a small grocery store. Ahead of her was another mother with 2 children, counting coins nervously, realizing she didn't have enough money for all the items in her basket. The young mother remembered the kindness of the taxi driver, and without hesitation, she stepped forward and quietly paid for the remaining items. The other woman was overwhelmed. She hugged her children tightly, thanking the stranger again and again. The children's faces lit up with happiness as they walked out with food in their arms. One of those children, a little girl with wide, curious eyes, carried that moment in her heart. The little girl didn't fully understand money or struggle, but she understood kindness. The next day, when she went to school, she noticed one of her classmates sitting alone at lunch with no food. The girl remembered the stranger who had helped her mother and decided to share her sandwich and snacks. The classmate's smile was the biggest reward she could have imagined. And just like that, the ripple reached another heart. What started with Daniel helping an elderly woman carry her groceries had spread from person to person, across the city, touching lives in ways none of them could have predicted. A smile, a sandwich, a free taxi ride, a grocery bill paid. A shared lunch, small actions, yet each one held the power to remind someone that they mattered. But the story doesn't end there. Later that week, Daniel found himself having a rough day at work. Deadlines were piling up, and he felt like no one noticed the effort he put in. He walked home late, his body tired, his mind restless. As he passed by a park, he saw a group of children playing. One of the children suddenly tripped and scraped his knee, bursting into tears. Daniel walked over, knelt down, and helped the child up, comforting him until his parents rushed over. The parents thanked him profusely. But what Daniel didn't know was that earlier that very same day, the mother of that child had been the one whose groceries were paid for by the young mother from the taxi. She recognized Daniel instantly from the description the woman had given at the store. "You're the man who helped the elderly woman with her bags, aren't you?" she asked with a smile. Daniel was taken aback. He nodded slowly. "How did you know?" The woman explained, and in that moment, Daniel realized that his small promise to make just one person smile had created something far bigger than he ever imagined. His act had traveled across the city, touching strangers he had never met, weaving kindness into lives he would never fully know. Daniel walked home that night with tears in his eyes, but they weren't from exhaustion. They were from gratitude. He understood now that kindness never disappears. It travels, it multiplies, and it returns, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. And that is the magic of kindness in the city. One person, one smile, one ripple, it can change everything. So the next time you find yourself walking through crowded streets, remember this story. Remember that even the smallest act, a smile, a kind word, a helping hand, can spark a ripple that may reach further than you will ever see. You don't have to fix the whole world. You just have to start with one moment of compassion. Because kindness is never wasted. It lives on, passing from heart to heart, until a city that once felt cold begins to shine with warmth. Thank you for joining us for this story.